don't like this for obvious reasons. By the same token, let's be honest. And I guess this will be the point where I cut the video. By the same token, let's be honest. Justice Democrats, Ocasio-Cortez, both were very clear that their objective was to primary incumbents. And for obvious reasons, and it makes all sense why, if your goal is a quote-unquote political revolution, if your goal is to kind of change the face of America, and you make the argument that the people who are in office right now are status quo, and status quo is not what America wants. We need change. A better world is possible. You just can't do it with the dinosaurs that are in office. If that's your argument, and you come out saying, and pursuant to that argument, in order to change the face of this country, if we want Medicare for all, if you want expansion of Social Security, if you want to ensure that any and every person, regardless of they can have 2 pennies in their bank account, can go to college without going into massive, massive loads of debt, because we as a society want those things. If that's your argument, and you know full well that the people who are in office right now are not going to allow you to make that work, meaning that reality is never going to come to pass with the dinosaurs that are sitting in office now. If you know that, then your only political position could be, we need to get them out of office. We can't pressure them into what we want. We can't push them in any particular way. And let's be honest, there is a ton of cash lining their pockets that incentivizes them not to what you want. Doesn't matter if it's popular with the American public. Doesn't matter that if the argument is made, it would be even more popular with the American public. What matters is what is in their, you can say, immediate interest. And not just what is in their immediate interest, even to some degree what they believe is politically possible. If you want the world that you say you want, they need to be taken out of that office. Is it the most logical thing in the world to say, we need to primary Democrats? We need to primary Democrats. That said, if you say that, you can imagine that the dinosaurs that are in office are not going to allow their extinction. You know, there's an asteroid that's going to hit us, but we're just going to sit here and watch the asteroid. They're going to take steps to prevent their own extinction. One of the methods that they decided to take steps with is this heavy-handed approach to, we're going to apply sanctions to any vendor that assists the people who are trying to take us out of office. Now, that's heavy-handed. Somewhat gross that you even have to take that step. Like you don't even believe in the legitimacy of your own stance with regards to you representing the nation's interests. If you did, this step wouldn't necessarily be necessary, and yet they found this step to be necessary. Right here, this is a part of the document that's interesting. Ocasio-Cortez and Justice Democrats apparently have agreed to not primary incumbents in contested districts. Meaning, in the document, this article right here is making this case and saying, look, you're taking a heavy-handed step. And you don't need to take that heavy-handed step because we've already agreed to not primary Democrats in contested districts. Right here. The pressure on both sides is a rare defense of the freshman representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat in New York, by Democratic colleagues. Ocasio is most closely associated with the effort to primary incumbent Democrats in safe seats who are not representing their communities. She previously served on the board of Justice Democrats, which is actively recruiting challengers and remains close with the group. Ocasio-Cortez and Justice Democrats have both made clear they're only targeting safe Democratic seats and are not to put Democratic majority at risk, but paranoia within the Democratic caucuses left that promise to fall on deaf ears. Let's be clear. If this policy remains in place, it'll mean that it would not only allow new Ayanna Pressley or AOCs to emerge, it's simply wrong. Essentially, it would not only prevent AOCs and Ayanna Presley's, it's simply wrong. This is Rokana. It's hypocritical for a party that is championing strong antitrust. The DCCC is acting as a monopoly, saying that anyone who does business with them can't do business with its competition. Fair enough. But you put them on notice. Their response to this is to say, fine, we're going to suck the life out of your ability to even run against us in some of these cases. Here's the thing. There's a problem with that position. And there's a few. I have 3 specific problems. let's be clear in our positions. There is a reckoning that needs to take place within the Democratic Party. Just saying. And I agree with the original premise that these things in this country, we can have a better world. You just can't do it with the dinosaurs in office, meaning you do need to get people out of office. That's somewhat just as a basic flat fact. Giving the caveat that you won't go after Democrats that are in quote-unquote contested seats is somewhat of a poor strategy. For one, they're not going to give you that caveat. Do you honestly believe that the Democratic Party would give some lefty a caveat if that Democrat that was in office, say it was a lefty, was being expensive to certain business interests because maybe there was a tax cut that he wouldn't pass, maybe there was some kind of business policy that he wouldn't support? Do you honestly believe that a ton of money that's backing a right-wing candidate that's running in the Democratic Party would say, well, that lefty is in a safe seat, so I don't necessarily want to go after him? That's nonsense. If that was a contested seat, they would not care. You would not get that benefit of the doubt. You would not get that caveat by people who are now applying sanctions to your ability to maintain or raise campaigns. You should not do the same if your enemy is not willing to give it. And yeah, I'm saying enemy because they're literally putting sanctions on you. They literally cheated your candidate. And in the process of doing all this, you're still offering caveats of, in contested districts, we're not going to go after you. If your opponent is not willing to give that caveat, nor should you. Just saying, that's the first point. The second point is the caveat, it works off a wrong premise. This notion that the person who's in office has somehow some higher degree of electability than the lefty, in which case the lefty would definitely lose and the right-wing Democrat who's in office will absolutely win. Why would you agree to that default position? It is very possible that the lefty has just as much legitimacy to winning the office, if not more so, than the Democrat that is in that contested seat. Meaning just the very act or fact that the seat is contested doesn't necessarily mean that the lefty would do worse. Why would you assume that? This is kind of my point. Why would you take certain positions that are from the perspective of the people who you're trying to get rid of? Why? Yeah, you should not assume that the default position is somehow the corporatist, or that the centrist is somehow the default position. And if there just so happen to be a centrist in a contested seat, that centrist would do better than a lefty. So you won't challenge the fact that the person is in that contested seat. Meaning you won't primary the guy because the guy's in a contested seat. That's nonsense. Your candidate may represent that office better than that corporatist that just barely won or is barely winning. I hope that's clear as a second point. Don't assume that the centrist is somehow a default position or somehow a better position. If you really indeed is looking for a revolution, you're trying to actually change the face of this country. If that centrist is going to stand in your way of you changing that face of the country, then that centrist need to be pulled out of his seat. You should give no caveats of such. Also, last point. Legitimacy. The argument of legitimacy. One of the biggest and I think most direct arguments that came out of 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost to reality show host was the very fact that Hillary Clinton lost to reality show host. You had a status quo candidate who is status quo among status quo, meaning breathes it. Politics for like 40 years. And this person who assumed that they were going to win the presidency, who the overwhelming majority of liberals assumed was going to win the presidency, and looked at it as just her place to be in that presidency, she lost. The American public decided something else. With all of the media, for the most part, being on the side of Hillary Clinton, with Donald Trump cast as this maniac that is going to somehow destroy America itself, people still chose Trump. That's how distinctive they were in their difference of having something else. Or that's how resolute they were in having something else. And placing that vote for an unknown quantity of Trump. In addition to Donald Trump, they lost the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and 1,100 seats all throughout the United States from the standpoint of Congress. Any notion to legitimacy at this point has been lost. It's gone. There's no legitimacy at all in this place. At the point where you lose to this degree, your claim on legitimacy to some degree has been abolished. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, again, as if they're centrists, and that centrism is somehow a default. It's nonsense. And I think it's working on somewhat of a wrong premise. If your argument to some degree is that they've lost legitimacy, then that needs to be your argument, and that needs to be what you hold to heart. And in one dispositional argument after the next that's being made, you should take it as if you are the default. You are the person that the American public wants, and argue from that position. And if that means that this guy needs to get out of his seat, even if it's in a contested district, then that guy needs to be pulled out of his seat. And you need to be willing to primary, and that give these caveats that you'll give hands off in some of these other areas. Understand the situation to which you find yourself. They are trying to end the existence of people like AOC and some of these other lefties that got into office on the last go-round. They do not like grassroots. They're using you for political ends. And if you're going to get in office and you're really going to try to change and reinsole the Democratic Party, then caveats like this are not helpful. They will give you no such caveat. I'll end this here. I don't want this one to be too long. It's 17 minutes is kind of too long, even though there are 2 videos. The party can straight up tell candidates not to do interviews with outlets. And beyond that, it is very possible that the civility that the candidates are displaying in the Democratic Party is being done so in order to prevent the arguments that need to take place. Meaning there is a different ideology at work that's working within the party itself when these guys are running for the presidency. And that ideology needs to be explored. And if there's some kind of heavy-handed thing from above saying, don't have that political fight, then that's a problem. In this very specific case where they're literally saying, we're going to maintain status quo. So if anybody's running, we're going to, we're going to, there's sanctions. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. There are sanctions. All right, I'm going to end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. I think so. And I'll see you in a few. And